So a lot about this discourse sucks ass. But I'm going to try to explain what's happening on Twitter right now and then give my take on it. But there's a lot of discourse right now. Why am I making a video about Twitter discourse? I don't know. Okay. So there is again Twitter discourse about ADHD and autism and disability and the word disorder, or the concept of disorder in this context, right? It all started with some person saying that the label ADHD, autism and ADHD together, is going back because the word disorder sucks or something, because the D in ADHD stands for disorder. I have a lot of feelings about that take in general, but I'll get to that, because that was a weird fringe take, but everyone responded to that fucking buck wild. There's takes on Twitter of people saying that the word disorder is good, actually. We are disordered and that's okay. Which is a take, TM, that I find very offensive. And there is a take of, no, actually, you're right. But there's almost nobody is saying that. And a lot of other people are saying that the more correct idea is that the word ADHD is used specifically to be able to find community. However, it is not the correct term to be using, because we are not disordered. And there's a lot of people saying things like, oh, but if you don't personally identify with the word disorder, that's fine, but let people use the word that they want to use, and some people don't even consider it disability. Right? Which I also find a deeply misinformed position. So, let's get into it, right? Because it's a lot of shit. And it always comes down to a few questions. What are ADHD and autism? What do you mean when we say disordered? What do we mean when we say disability? And is a choice, individual directed approach a good approach to have in this situation? Should everyone just use whatever word they want to use, or is that a misinformed way of looking at this? I already give you a little pick on my opinion on that, but let's get into it, shall we? So, autism and ADHD. If you have both, should you call yourself ADHD? My opinion, why not, I call myself ADHD, I call myself autism, I call myself ADHD all the time. Does that mean I think that we as ADHDers are disordered? No. It's just the most used term. And I don't want to use different terminology right now because I want to have access to my community, and this is the terminology that people use. Does that suck? Absolutely. And I think that we want to change, and I think that we should change, but we don't have the luxury right now to think about different terminology because people just aren't on board with that, clearly. So, do I think then, obviously no, but do I think then that disorder is a good term to use for ADHD? No, absolutely not. And the reason for that is because there's nothing wrong with me. ADHD is not something that's wrong with anyone, and disorder inherently not even implies that, it just says that you are disordered, you are disordered, there's something wrong with you. That's what disorder means. So I hate that take. I hate that way of looking at disability. I hate that way of looking at neurodivergency. No, there's nothing wrong with me. I am not disordered. A lot of people disagree with me on that because they say, but this ruins my life. ADHD ruins my life. It is terrible to live with. And I think they misunderstand me when I say that there's nothing wrong with them, that that's not a disorder. This can suck. ADHD can be something that fucking sucks to live with. That still does not mean that there's something wrong with you, though. The same way that certain disabilities can just sometimes suck, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. When I'm saying it's not a disorder, I am not saying that you cannot struggle. Because of course it's a struggle. It's a disability, right? Disability is a struggle. Um, but the inherent difference between disability and disorder, disability focuses on the things we are not able to do, and disorder focuses on what's wrong with us. And looking at what we're not able to do, disability, does not put the blame on us, does not put like any blame at anywhere necessarily, right? Because it doesn't say anything about inherent like wrongness the way that disorder does, because it just kind of says there are certain things that people expect you to be able to do and yet you're not able to do, and that's all what disability is really, if you boiled it down to it. And to me, a very, very profound part of that, society, an ableist society that is not able to make the world accessible enough for us to live in. Granted, there is no accessible world that would make disabled people the same as able-bodied people, but in a world that wasn't the same as our capitalist hellscape, we could live long, fulfilled lives as long as our body is able to. And we are not getting that because of capitalism, because of an ableist world. Not because there's anything wrong with you. And the fact that we're so eager to defend the word disorder, right? Says to me that we have internalized so much ableism that the idea that we cannot defend that something is wrong with us, that like something is defective about us, would take away the acknowledgement of our pain. We have to be told that we're defective before we get to be okay, like gets to acknowledge that we are hurting. Because like it just tells me that we have to be humble or something, you know? Oh, this thing is ruining me, so it must mean that it's wrong with me. Instead of like looking at how the world is and realizing the world is screwing us over. This is done to us disabled people. And I'm not like in this analysis a lot of people say that, oh, you're like excluding people like with chronic pain, you're excluding people like who have a lot of support needs, and I am not, because I do mean to say that a lot of barriers that every single disabled person experiences are caused by an ableist society, as in like people with high support needs wouldn't have to jump through hoops and lose like financial independence the moment that they decide to get married, or the moment that they decide to like have somewhat of like a financial independency, or all these other things, like when they need support from like workers. If you don't have the funds for that, you're screwed. And in a world that doesn't work the way that it does, you would still need that support, but you would be able to live a life that is comfortable for you, you know? And like that would still be very different from like a person that is able-bodied and like able-minded, or whatever how you want to call it, like neurotypical. However, that is not the way that disability looks in this world, right? So I feel like a lot of what disability is because of the world around us, and the fact that we not only cannot acknowledge that what disability means, we also want to use the word disorder to describe what we are experiencing is so demotivating, because I just genuinely believe that every single human being who describes their ADHD or their autism or any other mental illness or mental like health related thing that they have, like neurodivergency I should say, every single person who wants to describe their neurodivergency as a disorder, that's internalized ableism. The same way that when I hear like trans people describe their transgender identity as agonizing dysphoria, and that's what the reason that they're trans. I see that as internalized anti-transness, right? I don't see that as like someone who understands the oppression that they are experiencing. That feels like someone who tries to victim blame themselves in a weird sense of like trying to put the blame in them. Like, oh no, it's not just society that makes me disabled or makes me like trans, like makes my transgender identity like agonizing. It's I have gender dysphoria disorder. Well, not disorder, gender dysphoria, or I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I find that too many of us have become complicit with the system of the DSM that like until like way too recently put like gender identity disorder in there, and now it still said gender dysphoria as if it's a mental illness. Way too recently had asexuality in there. Way too recently had homosexuality in there. A lot of us still believe that DSM is anything else but an oppressive way of putting us in little kind of categories to see if we're like mentally ill enough to be like put away, or mentally ill, not mentally ill enough so they can ignore us and not give out any like actual fucking support. Please stop using the DSM as any way to validate yourself. Like, I understand the necessity of wanting someone to validate you. I want to get the fucking autism diagnosis very badly. However, being acknowledged in a shitty system that is not made for us, and that feeling good, does not mean that that system is correct. The system is not correct. We are not disordered. Stop saying that about yourselves. I genuinely think that we should not be telling people that it's just up to the individual to identify whatever. No! Because if we let individual people be okay with calling themselves disordered, we are just... I'm not trying to take autonomy away. If you personally want to identify as disordered, that's fine, I guess. But like, understand that there is a very big possibility of that, like that need to identify yourself as disordered is very much likely to be internalized ableism, and not being able to critique that, because that would be like not respecting people's identity or whatever, I think is genuinely really fucking like dangerous if we look at it that way. Like, are we not allowed to like tell people that they're doing themselves damage if they are just so willing to be complicit in a system that is like willing to just put them into the margins? Like, that's fucking buck wild to me. You know? So please don't... okay. I think I'm gonna just let this go now. But this is genuinely important to me. Like, calling yourself disordered is just not a good approach. And I just hope, and you deserve better. You deserve to look at yourself as a whole person, as a whole, beautiful, not broken person. You are not disordered. You are perfect the way you are. Even if you struggle, even if you're struggling, even if you are hurting, there's nothing wrong with you. And I genuinely think that you deserve to like see that. Like, you deserve to see that without having to call yourself disordered. Yeah. So that's this video. Goodbye.